Hello and a very warm welcome to our special presentation, Budget of Hope. The economic survey has been presented. The survey provides a summary of the annual economic development across the country during a financial year. And to understand what corporate India wants from Budget 2021, I'm joined by Mr. Chandrajit Banerjee, Secretary General of CII. Mr. Banerjee, welcome to Rajya Sabha Television and thank you so much for joining us.
Thank you. Thank you.
As Prime Minister has said that Finance Minister Nirmala Sitharaman has already presented 4 to 5 mini budgets in the form of packages. And of course, the big one we expect on 1st of February, expectations of the CII from the upcoming budget.
So actually, very much there has been these mini budgets, as that has been mentioned. They had components of creation of fiscal space for public spending, support for the distressed segments of the economy, and some very bold reforms were something that we have also seen. And what I would imagine is that we should be able to see continuation of that in this budget. Three very important issues come to my mind. And number one that we would like to see in the budget, and which has come out also pretty much in the economic survey, is the issue of lives. And today, because of this pandemic in the world over, we have been reminded the importance of lives. And therefore, health and lives of people is something that one would definitely like to see in the budget. Second is livelihood, creation of employment. That also has seen very difficult times across the world, India no exception. And we would really need to see how livelihood could be a big focus in the budget, employment generation, etc. The third, of course, which is going to be paramount importance for the country, and this is the right time to see phenomenal focus on it, and which will itself be able to fill up many more needs that the country has today, is growth, is solid growth that we need to come up. We are the economic survey, the IMF has predicted strong growth rebound for India. I think this is the right time for us to see how we are able to create greater opportunities for investors, both Indian and foreign investors, and how do we make life simple for everyone to see to bring growth. And growth should actually be beneficial to every section of the Indian society. So that's the type of growth that we are talking about. So I think these three important priorities is what I can say. Coming from the economic survey today, listening to the Prime Minister in the World Economic Forum, and also today his mention of these mini budgets, I would imagine that these are some priorities for the country.
All right, since we're talking about the economic survey, what were the big takeaways or the highlights for you, sir?
So the big highlight, if I can say, you've seen it was clearly mentioned that the economic survey. That the GDP is likely to contract by 7.7%. You also saw that India witnessing a palpable V-shaped recovery, and that came out very clearly. And it also came out very clearly that the economy is likely to recover full momentum over the next years. And the FY 2022 growth, which is a very important estimate in line with the IMF projection of 11.5%. And it's talked about an FY 2022 GDP, which is 11%, and also the FY 22 nominal GDP, which is 15.4%. And I see the impact of all of this very strongly in that, and I hope that this recovery is supported by very strong higher investment so that the multiplier effect is visible in the forthcoming year. And strong growth in the nominal GDP, which has been said in the economic survey, will also keep the fiscal deficit to GDP ratio pretty much in control. So I see the economic survey also helping us to focus much more on growth through the budget. And I also see that it also tells us that we need to carry on with a majority of the reforms process and the reforms that we have embarked upon. So I see and if what the economic survey recommends and what the economic survey talks about, if that is taken into account and really seen, and we see reflections of that very strongly in the budget, I would see that we are in a very strong economic growth and developmental path.
So a lot of experts have been saying that Fiscal deficit can wait, but economic growth cannot. Of course, the focus has to be on reviving growth, on maintaining a balance between lives and livelihoods. But certainly, there are worries about the fiscal headroom.
Yes, but I think what we really need to look at, there are many opinions about this entire issue of fiscal space, but I would very strongly think that when we talk about fiscal space, that we have to look at the deficit in a 3-year framework, and the budget should really announce a calibrated spending that will gradually bring back to a prudent fiscal deficit. So it's not a 1-year job and it's not a 1-year figure. And I think we need to be very careful at this point in time. We need to bring back growth. We need to bring back livelihood, for which it would be necessary. And and the economic survey also pretty much clearly talks about it. And once you bring back growth, once we are able to see growth coming back, we would and we define the path of the fiscal deficit. I think we will clearly have the right sort of economics at play. One important point which I really want to talk about is the off-budget expenditure was clearly mentioned in the last budget, in the annexure, and this clarity should continue in full transparency. That's going to be very critical to reduce the off-budget spending. And I would think that the budget must also clearly spell out exigencies and a pragmatic roadmap for the fiscal consolidation, where all spending is clearly seen onto the table. That's very important. And revenue projections would also need to be seen in accordance with the current trends. Today we have a very strong challenge, say, for instance, on the taxation side, and therefore some tax revenues might miss the mark. Therefore, alternate sources really need to be emphasized. And what are these alternate sources that we can talk about? There are several ways to boost revenues. I would think privatization of the PSUs, including loss-making and profitable PSUs, that will be very, very important. And that's an imperative, actually, to be carried out as per a very strong defined plan. And the government can reduce its stake definitely to below 50%. The other last point on that is assets such as land, infrastructure, etc., they can also be monetized to raise revenues. So there are avenues of raising revenues, and I would think that the government should focus on those at this point in time.
Absolutely. Well, the focus has to be on non-tax revenue, and for that, privatization seems to be the key. Do you also expect clarity on the PSC policy in the upcoming budget?
Absolutely so. And I would think, while there is I would imagine that there is importance on the policy framework, which is very cool. The government has shown a very strong intent, and but at the same time, when we do that, what is really required going forward is a very strong implementation plan. Very often than not, the intent in the budget and the proposals have always been very strong. But I would think it is important now for us to see a very strong implementation map, and I would look at something a very strong, in fact, a disinvestment ministry, so to say, which will really see how this is very strongly implemented. That's something, if done well, if done within time frames, it will have phenomenal effect on India.
Have you made that suggestion to the finance ministry, sir?
Yes. Absolutely. We want a very strong very strong disinvestment implementation plan. Yes, of course.
All right. Moving ahead and talking about healthcare allocation, what kind of allocation do you anticipate this time around?
So I would, this is a very important point at this in a situation like this coming immediately after the pandemic, and this is something that we would like to see very strongly. And it is a much long-waited sort of a demand, for, if you can say, for coming that India needs to see much stronger spend in the area of healthcare. And I would imagine that what we really need to see at this point in time is a roadmap towards going towards a 3% spend of the GDP for healthcare. And I would think that is going to be extremely critical and important. And I would think the government has the intent again here to do so. It is a very difficult thing to implement because while healthcare should take the center stage, so to say, It is very difficult to look at it so very easily in the country. And whatever if you see what the economic surveys say, this is pretty much in line with what the CII has been advocating. That is an increase in the government spend of healthcare by 3%. And as India looks actually to attract global FDI post the pandemic, the state of health infrastructure would play a very important and a very critical. It would become a very important criteria to choose when we do an investment destination. Therefore, the increased public expenditure, health expenditure, public health expenditure is a very important from multiple perspectives, meeting the healthcare needs of all our citizens. As has been said in the economic survey, the proportion of income that gets spent on healthcare, that will get substantially reduced if we see more public spending on healthcare, and that would really help households and people of India. So that's a very important thing. The economics of productivity and adding to the investment attractiveness of India is another very important point that I would like to mention. So creating health infrastructure in the across the country would be a very critical area of work, and I think here the states and the center would have to do a work in tandem.
Way ahead for Atmanirbhar Bharat.
So yes, I think that's again something which we would see. Atmanirbhar Bharat has been really something which makes India a very competitive India in the global context. And today, if we see Atmanirbhar Bharat to be the focus on Atmanirbhar Bharat to be continued in the budget, that would be something of great importance. To what we have seen in the country is over the last few months is a mission. Atmanirbhar Bharat has been strengthened through the various, you had various interventions. Which has been talked about by the Honorable Finance Minister. And the tax policy and the customs tariffs now need to support that. We have a phenomenal scheme now, the PLI scheme, the production linked incentive scheme, and graded move towards a more competitive customs tariff. So to say, focus on ease of doing business, both from the procedural point of view, as well as to make investment much easier. These are going to be very critical in seeing that India becomes Atmanirbhar. We have seen phenomenal examples of Atmanirbharta in the last few months, and certain things have been spoken very often. The President of India spoke about it, like the PPE kits or the ventilators, etc. So I would think that going forward, we need to see a very strong competitive India, and Atmanirbhar Bharat, through Atmanirbhar Bharat, we will see a competitive India which is very well linked globally, but can actually stand on its own.
So we need to see a competitive India through Atmanirbhar Bharat. On that note, Mr. Banerjee, thank you so much for joining us. We'll get back to you for your comments on the budget day. Thanks so much.